The old question, who watches the watchers? Well, in the final analysis, we do. It's up to us as members of a democratic society to look after those whom we elect, because it's they who appoint and regulate the regulators. We need to make it clear to our elected representatives that we expect them to protect the wider self-interest, that we're watching them, and it will turn them out of office if they or the regulators they appoint and oversee fail to look after the wider self-interest. Now, it could be argued that this is basically that this violates the church-state separation, which I certainly believe in as well, because I'm basing basically governmental policy on Christian teaching, what I understand to be Christian teaching. Well, we can't base the government on Christian teaching or that of any other religious tradition, but Christian teaching should guide Christian voters in making policy choices. But first, Christians need to get clear on what our tradition actually teaches and how that informs our economic and political situation. An important first step is for Christians to find out what our tradition actually says. And we must beware of distorting the teachings of Christ with the lens of individualistic ideology. We have to counter the teaching of salvation as essentially a matter of individual faith apart from our social connections and responsibilities. And we need to oppose the wrong-headed conflation of Christian teaching with free market capitalist ideology. When we do so, I believe that we will find that active regulation of the economy by a democratic government remains the best way for us to take care of one another and thus to take care of ourselves. It also accords with the profound wisdom of Christian teaching. Thank you. Yeah. Do you want to just open it up for questions, or okay, questions, comments at this point? Yes, sir. Can you tell me your name, please? We've met before. It's
Emory.
Emory.
Burton. Rieger, in his recent book, specifically says that the market is almost like a god. There's a religious, maybe not worship, it's a little strong, but almost true, but a worship of the market. I thought what you said is excellent. My question, when you said democratic government is us, it seems to me the problem is the government is too much beholden to its wealthy contributors. The pharmaceutical companies and the oil companies will give to both sides, and will see that their interests are followed. And how is it possible to break that?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the problems that we run into is apathy on the part of voters. That we allow that to happen. We allow the corporations and lobbyists and so forth to take over the government because we don't pay attention. We don't stay involved in political affairs. And I think our elected representatives are able to get away with kowtowing to lobbyists and to corporations. They go where the money is, they go where the power is. And there are a lot more of us than there are of the corporations as well. If people are actively involved, I think that the representatives, our elected representatives, will pay attention. The Tea Party movement is a good example of that. I mean, it has, I don't like it, I don't agree with their politics, but just the fact that you've had all these people out waving signs and complaining about things has made politicians sit up and take notice. It happened that way during the Vietnam War as well, with the anti-war protests. I think that was a fine example of people pushing the government on, towards the interests of towards the wider self-interest in that way. It helped to break, at least in those particular circumstances, it helped to at least offset the power that's concentrated in Vietnam War, the defense industry and the military-industrial complex, which was being funded by the war, basically, which was making a profit off the war. So I think that it's really, I mean, one of the things that's very disappointing, I'm sure this is disappointing to all of you as well, is our collective amnesia in this country. How quickly we forget what our politicians have done to us in the past. So we have people complaining about Obama now for unemployment, for example, when here just a little while ago it was clear that it was the Bush administration that was responsible for that through their policies of deregulation and of trusting the market to the market players. So that has to stop. That apathy has to stop. That amnesia has to stop. And if they don't, I don't think there is a solution basically to that. I think we'll always be in basically a kind of oligarchy, which is what we have now, instead of a democracy. Yes, sir.
Bill, are there times when altruism, which you mentioned early on briefly, or what Jim White used to call self-giving love, would be in conflict with the wider self-interest from a Christian standpoint?
Can you give me an example of what you have in mind?
It might be people voting against their own best interest in order to make something better for somebody else, perhaps.
Okay, so, well, what I would say there is that if they're making it better for someone else because of this interconnection, it comes back to them as well. Yeah. So it's a matter of a trade-off in that. And I'm probably not understanding you right, but it sounds like a trade-off between the individual's immediate self-interest and the wider self-interest.
Let me try a different way. Yeah. How would you define altruism, and what place would that have in Christian faith?
Let's see, altruism, you know, I want to associate it directly with the wider self-interest.
Yeah,
I mean, it's also things like benevolence, for example, you know, looking after and having the interests of others besides yourself at heart. But also, what I'm trying to do here is show that that really is in the original person's self-interest as well. Okay, that we don't have to choose between me or them, because I'm part of them. I'm in here as well. Okay, so altruism might be against a person's narrow, immediate self-interest of maybe making money, making a profit on something, or you know, having pleasure or something like that. But in the long run, one benefits from altruism, benevolence, I guess, from looking after that wider self.